It's no secret prices are high. Nowadays, there's sticker shock almost every time you go to the grocery store. In Kansas, there's a little relief, but that could be changing.
Eliminating the state sales tax on food is a tax cut that helps every Kansas family.
Remember, Governor Kelly signed a bill into law last year, gradually repealing the state's food sales tax over the next few years. She wants it completely eliminated sooner. Well, now top Republicans in Topeka are pitching a plan to roll back that relief. Senate President Ty Masterson's promoting the proposal, which would exempt certain food items the federal WIC program considers healthy. Many prepared foods, Masterson says, would still be taxed.
And if you look back at our taxing of our state, none of us in this room would lay out taxes as we have them today, right? Because this host of exemptions here, and you pick your thing. So this is meant to be a tool.
Why the change? Well, top Republicans want some food to still be taxed to help pay for a flat income tax that they would like to see implemented statewide. Here to discuss, let's bring in our roundtable. Please welcome Brian Ellison, host contributor with KCUR, and KMBC 9 political reporter Michael Mahoney. All right, gentlemen, the main concern from critics about a flat tax, of course, is that this really benefits the wealthier tax brackets, right? By not eliminating the food sales tax completely, you're also hurting lower earners, I would imagine. How do Republicans sell this?
They say that the most growth-oriented states in the country right now either have no income tax or they have a flat tax. The critics on this say, yeah, a lot of those places are tourist attraction states where they have lots of industry that they can tax in other ways, and that Kansas wouldn't fit this. This is an interesting way of trying to link the food tax plan to eliminate all of it, or as the governor wants, Governor Kelly, or at least some of it, as the Republicans have tried to do. And the big question here is, well, what is healthy food? What foods fall into that category? So we'll see.
Right. I think it's hard to overlook that the history here only goes back a year. Laura Kelly really pushed hard for the complete repeal of the food tax. She wanted it to be immediate. She compromised with the legislature to roll it out over several years, and here we're in the period where it's being rolled out over several years, and now they want to change it. They don't want to repeal it the way that had been agreed and with the law that she signed. So I think we're going to see some real continued legislative bickering over this, because as you pointed out in the opening, Cody, the ability for Senate President Ty Masterson to move forward with his flat tax depends on their ability to make these changes to that food tax already approved.
And I think that this may end up being the major battle of this session of the legislature. What do you think?
I think that's absolutely right. And I think taxes are not the hottest topic. People don't want to dig into the minutia of them. But this actually, much like former Governor Sam Brownback's plans a decade ago, could have very significant lasting implications for the state.
Right. Another topic that is a hot button topic that a lot of people talk about, especially in the campaigns, education, right? And there are dozens of bills now either affecting what kids learn or where they learn in Topeka right now.
It seems like that's the theme of the year in Kansas, actually in Missouri as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Many laws affecting how education is funded. A lot of those laws deal with providing tax credits or other things that critics call vouchers to take money out of public schools and put them toward private schools, educational savings accounts. Some of those would even support homeschools. There's even a proposal to give parents a tax credit if they don't put their children in public schools. In addition to that, we of course have talked before on this program about the parental Bill of Rights bills that would give parents more input on the content of curriculum. And there's even continued conversation about that piece of Governor Kelly's budget that would increase funding for special education, but which so far has not seen any action in the legislature.
Yeah, and the advocates of public education in both Kansas and Missouri view this cluster of bills in both states as part of what is now an accelerated attack on public education and how it's funded and what its role is in state government. And in both states, as I think everybody knows, a huge portion of state taxes goes to fund education.
Let's end in Missouri today. There's a major concern about Medicaid benefits, especially this spring.
Yeah, Missouri is at the all-time high for people enrolled in Medicaid. That's the federally funded program to help low-income Missourians. In Missouri, it's called Health Net. People have to normally re-enroll every year, but during the pandemic, they actually stopped kicking people off. Now they're going to start again, and there is a lot of concern that as many as 200,000 Missourians might suddenly be without health care. Some of them because they're no longer eligible, but many of them simply because they don't have the tools or the awareness that they need to re-enroll. There's a lot of concern about how they'll be provided for.
Yeah, so especially this estimated 200,000, Brian, that you're talking about. There is concern that those folks who joined Medicaid during the pandemic have never gone through the re-enrollment process and may not know how to do it at all because they've never done it before.
Exactly, and I think the concern is that many in the population who are most likely to be kicked off, who need to re-enroll, will be the least equipped. They'll have the least access to resources, like access to computers, like finding the right phone number to get the help they need, and may find themselves without health insurance, even though they need it.
All right, so disadvantage. We'll be watching this story in the weeks and months ahead, rest assured. Brian Ellison, Michael Mahoney, thank you.